If your learning program doesn't stick, it wasn't a business driver. It was just a fun event. And this is the dangerous part. You can have glowing feedback forms. You can have high engagement in the room. You can have excited participants leaving the room and still have nothing change afterwards. From our data, manager engagement is one of the least influential factors in someone sticking with their commitment, which I know is kind of crazy. But here's the thing. We found that facilitator engagement is insanely powerful. And if you want your programs to survive budget review and executive scrutiny and real-world pressure, we need to focus not just on what happens in the room, but what happens after. And that change that takes place after doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. We found that there are 3 core components to making sure that your learning programs stick. And in this video, I want to dig into those with you. The first mental flip that we need to make is how we talk to the participants in the room. There are a couple core components to this, but the first of which is priming them for commitment to change, not for consumption. One of the ways we do this is with something we call the beginning, middle, end. Sounds complicated, I know. Basically what it says is that we're going to insert 3 beats into the flow of the workshop to help reframe participants' thinking around what I'm consuming to what I'm applying. At the beginning, it starts with a statement of, hey, we're going to learn a bunch of stuff, we're going to have some fun, but none of it's going to matter if we don't put something into practice. It primes them, gets them thinking about, yes, I will do something at the end of this session. Maybe, I just got here. Then at the middle of the session, we remind them of that and say, hey, remember at the beginning I said that we were going to focus on what came after? Well, let's pretend that the session's done at this midway point. If there was one thing from the first half of the session that mattered most to you, what would it be? Write it down. Why would it matter to you to put into practice? This is a 2-minute exercise. You get them talking to each other, but it gets them again thinking about the content through a different lens. It's not about what I learned, it's about what I'm going to apply. Then at the end of the workshop, we really lock it in and say, all right, so as we leave the room here, what's the one thing that mattered most to you that if you were to put it into practice would actually lead to some sort of lasting change for you? That would be exciting. They choose something, they lock it in. Now, here's where most people get this wrong. They stop at that point. They go, great, I've got this great intention. I call that the New Year's Eve moment. Of course they have good intention. They just learned the stuff. They're inspired. They want to put it into practice. But if their commitment is something like, I'm going to be a better listener, that's not a very practical and useful commitment. What we want to do now is we want to reframe that good intention through the lens of daily practice. Daily practice on be a better listener might look something like, when I'm in a meeting, instead of leading with my opinion, I will ask one qualifying question so I can be perceived as someone who actually cares and I can invite the perspective of other people. So step 1, beginning, middle, and end priming. Step 2, converting intention into daily practice. Step 3 is around building social scaffolding, building support. So what we do with this is we have them publicly declare what their commitment is going to be. They choose the thing, they commit to it in front of their peers. If you're using a tool like Actionable, you can capture that inside a visible dashboard so that everyone on the team has a little bit more accountability around putting it into practice. All of that is around priming the participant to want to change and to have a path forward to be able to change. Beginning, middle, and end, intention to daily practice, public commitment. All of these are around framing priming as a commitment to change. So let me ask you, when's the last time you explicitly asked your participants what they were willing to commit to? But here's the thing, the room doesn't create change, repetition does. One of the key building blocks from the last piece I was just talking about is this conversion from good intention into daily practice. Now participants need to actually practice it. What we want to focus on here is the test and review loop. We want to accelerate that. Most training programs, if they have any sort of post-session evaluation, it's 30, 60, 90 days later. It's a single hit in time to say, did we actually learn something and put it into practice? What I'm encouraging here is a bit radical in the sense that it's a daily test and review process. Now that might sound arduous, but it's not in practice. Here's what it actually looks like. On a daily basis, because the commitment that participants made is for a daily activity, they reflect on 2 things. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel I did with this today? And if they want to, they can journal about it. Journaling here is like a sentence or 2, a note saying what went well, what didn't. This is a 15-second exercise. We find that most participants who are prompted to engage in this type of reflection on a daily basis do so about twice a week, which already is exponentially more than you would have had on a previous evaluation model. We find that tech-enabled support can be really, really helpful here. We developed a tool called the Habit Builder that makes it easy for this to happen. It's now being used with over 100,000 participants on 9,000 programs. But whether you're using the Habit Builder or something else, sending a daily nudge, reminding participants of the commitment that they made to a daily practice helps keep it top of mind for them and gives them an opportunity to reflect while they're in the flow of work. This can be extremely non-evasive, and it builds the muscle memory of, oh, right, that's the thing that I wanted to work on. The last point I want to make on this around daily practice is that this is not a forever thing. We find the sweet spot to be a 21 to 28 day window, 3 to 4 weeks, where they're going to practice that single micro behavior change for a short period of time and have an opportunity to reflect on it on a regular basis. Because what gets practiced gets strengthened. And hey, if the only opportunity participants had to practice this was in the classroom, do we really expect that the change is going to happen? And there's one more piece that I really want to focus on as it comes to helping participants put learning into practice. And it's the appreciation that change does not happen in isolation. We are social creatures. We work in social environments. We're surrounded by other people. So rather than have those social elements be blockers to progress, we want to look for a way to flip them into enablers of the change that participants are trying to make. We found that there are 3 highly reliable social elements that help participants stay on track. The first and most powerful is something called accountability buddies. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept, but it's easy to apply and it's free for you to put on every training program. I still am staggered by the fact that this isn't just standard for all training programs. All it is while they're still in the room, have participants buddy up, have them tell the other person what they're committing to, and set a cadence. Could be once a week, could be every 2 weeks, where they're going to regroup and connect. It doesn't even have to be on a call or in person. It could be just a Slack message, but it's 15 seconds of what went well and what did I learn? That's it. Asking the question of each other helps to reinforce and lock in the learning. When we know we have someone holding us accountable to actually moving this forward, we are much more likely to take action. So that's number 1. Number 2 is visibility. I talked about the leaderboard at the beginning, not even leaderboard, but basically a dashboard where we can see who's committing to what. Another important part to this is that it's not just around who committed to it, but how actively engaged am I in the change process. So having some sort of visible dashboard for that can be really helpful. I've seen clients do it on a whiteboard. I've seen clients obviously use Actionable's technology to do that. But the third factor, you're thinking manager, right? It's actually not. From our data, manager engagement is one of the least influential factors in someone sticking with their commitment, which I know is kind of crazy. But here's the thing. We found that facilitator engagement is insanely powerful. And think about it, it makes sense, right? Your facilitator has built a relationship with these people in the room. They're perceived as a subject matter expert on the topic. And then after the session's done, we lock them in a cupboard and don't let them interact with participants anymore. It doesn't make any sense. And I get that there's logistical elements involved here, but they can be overcome fairly easily. Facilitators engaging with participants has been statistically proven to substantially increase the likelihood that participants stick with this longer. Okay, so what does that actually look like? Well, we developed something called facilitator CPR. Basically, if facilitators have visibility into the behavior change efforts of the participants, only one of 3 scenarios is going to be happening. Either that person is improving, they are flatlining or declining, or they've disappeared. That's it. So CPR stands for celebrate, probe, and remind. Celebrate is, hey, looks like you're getting some great progress here. Well done. Honestly, that little pat on the back can go a really long way when it comes from someone who's in a position of authority or perceived authority. It also says, I see you, I know that you're working on something here, and that fuels our intrinsic motivation as well. Secondly, is around probing. If someone is sort of stuttering, they're not seeing progress in their sort of self-reported scale of 1 to 10, or they're declining, there's an opportunity to dig in here. What do you think's going on here? What are the blockers for you? Sometimes they just needed the prompt and they can answer the question on their own. Sometimes they need a reminder of a piece of the content or the training. And this creates a great opportunity for all that beautifully designed drip-fed content that you created that nobody's consuming. Now you can send it to them in a timely fashion that actually meets them where they're at. And third, remind. Sometimes people just disappear. Sometimes they get busy or the thing they committed to doesn't actually matter to them that much anymore. This is an opportunity to ask the question, reset, get them back on a positive track. Facilitators can be incredibly powerful in supporting participants, putting ideas into practice and making the learning stick, but only if you choose to leverage them. So if you're designing your workshops or your programs at large without priming participants, to focus on change as opposed to consumption, building in faster and more regular test and review processes, and or ignoring the social scaffolding that's so critical for learners sticking with their commitments. You're not designing a change program, you're delivering edutainment. And for most of us, that's not where we want to be. We know that our purpose is to drive change. These three core components can ensure A, that your participants put things into practice, and B, give you the ability to show your clients that you have a system for driving change. You're not just jazz hands and talk. And if you're like me and you want to see some data behind this stuff, we just recently published a report. It pulls data from over 6,000 learning programs, and it shows explicitly what other consultants are doing to make learning stick inside their programs. It'll give you some more clarity. It'll give you some ammunition in your conversations with clients around why you design programs the way you do to make learning stick and ultimately help them achieve the business outcomes that they're trying to achieve.